Hello, this is Elisa Di Napoli, and I am a holistic clinical hypnotherapist, coach, performer, and also NLP practitioner. So today I would really like to talk about relationship patterns and why do we tend, some of us anyway, tend to repeat the same kind of patterns, get into the same kind of relationships. The first one that I'd like to talk about is the idealizer. So the idealizer, if you are one, you would be strongly attracted to people that are of a particular physical appearance or type, particular age, particular status, whether it's a great job or no job at all, particular level of ambition, and you would prioritize those external characteristics above everything else, including an emotional bond. So you would place more importance, for example, on sexual attractiveness and that polarity than emotional attractiveness, which could be evidenced by kindness or strong communication skills, a shared worldview, that kind of thing. And so often you would see your partner as a reflection of yourself, and you want to convey the image that your partner represents. You may have the fantasy that someone with the appearance or professional status that you're drawn to will be enough to make you happy. But then eventually, typically, you would feel that you've got little in common with this person and end up breaking up. So if you think you may be an idealizer, ask yourself these questions. How would someone describe your type? Professional and physical. Write down these external characteristics. Has anyone ever idealized your characteristics? Did you feel appreciated by these suitors? Why do you think it's important or even tempting to idealize external characteristics? Can you think of people that repeat this pattern? And what do you think are some attributes that would be more important to pay attention to at the beginning of a relationship? Write them down and keep that list for later. The second pattern that I'd like to talk about is the emotional chaser. Now, if you're an emotional chaser, you tend to have partners who ultimately will not commit, may cheat on you, not appreciate you, and will not settle down, and people that you tend to put on a pedestal. You would be usually more emotionally committed to the relationship that your partner is. You may feel that your partner has got all the control in the relationship, all the power. You may feel that you are less worthy than your partner. And as if your partner were more interesting, and could easily slip through your fingers. You may believe that you have to work hard to keep him or her interested. Otherwise, they'll just leave or find somebody else. Notice that your partners always have excuses why they won't spend time with you, why they don't want to take the relationship to the next level, and it feels like you're waiting for them to realize that you are the one that they really want. It is often the case also that you may feel you may have a hard time imagining settling down for a love that's less than very intense and romantic. And the pattern is for you to basically think that your partner is too good for you or better than you, that it's unavailable or unattainable. And what motivates people like this, in this pattern, is the fantasy that if one day you'll win the love of such a partner, then you'll finally be able to feel good about yourself. You feel that you are finally good enough. So often this doesn't happen, and then the relationship ends, and then you end up feeling that you indeed are not good enough. So then you may continue the pattern even more the next time. If you think you may be an emotional chaser, then ask yourself these questions. Who in your life have you emotionally chased? Whose affection have you worked really hard for but never fully received? How did the chase end? Did you ever get what you wanted? What was the most difficult part of that situation to accept? And looking back, was the chasing done in the pursuit of a specific person, or did it become about something bigger than that? Now, the next type is the rescuer. Now, the rescuer is someone. If you're a rescuer, you'll be someone who attaches themselves to partners who are emotionally unstable in some way. You'll be focused on and worrying more about them than you ever worry about yourself. You will find people that at first perhaps seem to be sweet and with great potential, but also being slightly misguided or helpless in some way. And then not before long, you'll find that they are emotionally volatile or unstable or even aggressive and controlling, unhappy or unable to cope with some aspect of their life. Often these people can be addicts or alcoholics or have a history of depression or anxiety. And you may feel that love trumps everything and that you'll be able to rescue them and save them with the power of your love. But this often does not work because you tend to actually, although you believe in the potential more than the actual reality in the moment of what the person is like, you may end up actually trying to change them. And so then they'll resist that change because nobody will change if they don't want to. So you will be really invested in this fantasy that of who your boyfriend or girlfriend could become in the future as opposed to who they are now. So you got to remember, you're not a therapist or a life coach, and therapists can be locked in this pattern sometimes. The thing is that these wounded souls cannot rise to the occasion. Ultimately they cannot do that for whatever reason. So if you think you may be a rescuer, ask yourself, do you have a fix-it mindset? Have you ever tried to rescue a wounded soul? And if so, which type were they? What might be the appeal of forging a relationship with a wounded soul? And why would a person fall for someone's broken? What are the essential differences between a wounded soul and the average man or woman with typical imperfections? Finally, the last type is the sacrificer. Now, the sacrifices, if you are one, you will repeatedly have had partners who have verbally, emotionally, sexually, or physically abused you. You have noticed that your partner's moods tend to leap without warning from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. You may fear that anything you can do could trigger your partner to get really angry and violent and being in that abusive cycle. You may feel trapped. You may feel betrayed in your relationships. You may also feel too guilty to leave, too afraid of what your partner might do if you tried to leave. And you try to typically excuse your partner's behavior by saying things like, oh, well, it only happened once, or he only does it when he gets mad. And typically, a partner like that will get into this pattern of coming back and saying they're sorry and that they've changed their ways, and then things get worse. Eventually, if this goes on for long enough, you may even get to the point where you feel you're going insane, because your partner will be very good at putting the blame on you. You will lose grasp of what is normal in a relationship, and you may even be afraid that the abuse has damaged you to the point that you will never be able to have healthy relationships. You would even worry more about your partner's feelings than your own, and you may have internalized the notion that your partner is treating you in the way that you deserve to be treated. So after you continue to forge relationships that eventually become abusive, you feel trapped and you feel afraid, believing that there's never going to be a different outcome. And the constant abuse will convince you that there's nothing you can do to change this outcome, this abusive outcome. So if you think you may be a self-sacrificer, ask yourself these questions. Have you ever been in a relationship in which you have been abused in this way that I've described? Or if not, how have you avoided being in such a relationship? The second question is, what would you do if you were abused in that way? Emotionally, physically, sexually, or even verbally. What is the hardest abuse to spot, do you think? So these are the main relationship types. In the next video, I'd like to talk about the reasons why we get into these relationship patterns in more details, and what can we do to actually start to change. So thank you for listening, and until the next time, goodbye.